Hello everyone, just a quick word from your friendly editor/husband. For all of you who listen to So I'm Watching This Show and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android devices. I use the app and love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure you set So I'm Watching the Show as a favorite so you don't miss any new episodes. Again, the app is Podcast Republic, available on your Android device. Thanks!
I was going to apologize for taking so long to call you because I had to wait for the song I was listening to be over because it was so good.
Okay.
But I'm hooked, hard hooked on old Kylie Minogue at the moment.
All right.
Like the 80s stuff. And I was listening to something, not Kylie, I forget what, but she came on Shuffle, and Shuffle was like, I know what you want. You want Better the Devil You Know. And I was like, oh, you betcha. So I had to wait for the song to end, because when I get to that chorus, I just can't.
Can't stop in the middle.
Hello, everybody. I am Will.
And I'm Kristen.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show. On today's episode, I think we're going to continue our light trend in the month of August where we're revisiting. Is that hard to say?
Where? Yeah, a little.
Okay, where we're revisiting older movies that we remembered really, really liking, but we haven't seen in a while, and kind of look on them with fresh eyes.
I think this is the least of those. But I'm with you.
What do you mean by that?
We know we still like this movie. We knew sitting down that we still liked it.
I mean, once again, it's been a while since I had seen it. And it's I had the fondness for it, but I don't remember the last time I watched it. So there was a part of me that was watching it a little bit critically. And, well, when did you first see it?
College.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because I think Karen made me watch it.
Okay. And was it a love at first sight thing for you?
Well, it was because she loved it. And now I can't remember if it was Karen or Tina, but regardless, one of my college friends had me watch it. And it was because they loved it. And so their enthusiasm was contagious. And so I've just loved it from the first time I saw it.
Okay. I was weirdly kind of obsessed with the board game Clue. And not even so much playing it, just it in concept. I've always loved a whodunit and then there were none.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one of my favorite storytelling tropes. It's how I finally got into the horror genre, because for a long time I was very, very sensitive to scary stuff. And one of the earliest, scary movie franchises I saw was Scream, and it's very classic in that Agatha Christie type.
Well, whodunits are great and murder mysteries are great, and I just like mysteries also. And this falls, it is a whodunit, it is a murder mystery, but it's so funny that it's not scary. So it's I feel like a different thing even. Well, like a farce.
I like I said, I loved Clue in concept, and I just remember thinking it was glamorous, and just the characters, how they had, is it pseudonyms? What is the word?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How they all had the pseudonyms and stuff. And around this time, there was also a board game that I was obsessed with called 1313 Dead End Drive. And it was like Clue, but moral child. It was like Clue meets Mousetrap.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And when I was a child, it was the bomb. I think now would be pretty simplistic to play with, but I stumbled upon Clue's existence. I don't remember how. I want to say I've mentioned this, back in our first episode, I think, that my parents had a catalog of VHS movies from the rental store Errol's Video that we used to go to.
If you think $2 can't buy you much entertainment anymore, take a look at what Errol's Video Club members are watching tonight.
And I think it might have been in there because I remember just going through and reading. There was a little picture and a blurb about most of the movies, and they were in alphabetical order by genre.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember calling Blockbusters, calling the rental stores and stuff trying to find this movie, and it was a 95, and everybody thought I meant Clueless, and they kept telling me it wasn't out yet.
Sure.
And I was a child, and frankly, that almost seems out of character that, like, 10-year-old me was calling things by myself, but that's how I remember it, so... You know, I'll barely call and order Chinese food now at 34, but...
We ordered Chinese food last night, I wouldn't call the place.
And so I finally got my hands on it, and I kind of remember being immediately enraptured by it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I am insisting on telling this part of the story is because I actually found it scary.
Okay.
At 10. So much so that...
at 10, I get that.
Well, revisiting it, I'm like, considering its reputation as such like a fiercely funny comedy, it does follow the rules and conventions of a murder mystery. Yeah. Like, there are ominous scenes. Several times in this movie, there are parts where characters are alone in the dark with just the eye light on them, and, you know, Mrs. White is startled by the Jack-in-the-Box and stuff like that. I think that there are a couple of jump scares in this movie. I mean, it's tame. I mean, it's definitely
like
PG.
Mild jump scares, but I agree with you.
But I remember as a child mostly getting it. Like, even the stuff they were talking about, like, I mean, I had heard the word communism and all that stuff, and even J. Edgar Hoover and all that. It's like I had very base understandings of these things that I was able to follow it. And it just, like, revisiting this time, I was kind of surprised. Because, I mean, I think the opening is mostly just sort of creepy.
Yeah, it's eerie. It's very eerie.
And the further we get into the movie, the more comedy and absolutely, because there's comedy pretty much right out of the gate, starting with, like, the dog shit.
Yeah.
But we do really sort of ease into it, and gradually, you know, by the midway point into the third act, it turns into straight farce, like straight slapstick Looney Tunes craziness. I mean, there's even like Three Stooges, like, poke your eyes and snap your your overalls, or suspenders rather, and it did watch a little bit differently for me this time. Did you have any different of a viewing experience?
I didn't really. It mostly felt the same to me as it usually does. What was different for you?
Some of the jokes I don't find funny anymore.
Oh, okay. Like, which ones?
The low-hanging fruit stuff, I think the good stuff is still good, but the gay panic with Mr. Green...
Sure.
And there was a couple of them that I was like, that's kind of silly. Like, that doesn't really hold up.
No, I know there are jokes like that. I couldn't name them either, but I know what you mean. Now that you said it, I get it. I think there is a really fine-tuned balancing act through the whole movie, balancing between, like, this murder mystery, not only do we have who did it, there's a where and a why and a with what. It, like, the fact that it managed to actually kind of capture the essence of the board game. Yeah,
and
definitely.
I think that's where the comedy element is sort of necessary, because it's like, how do you make a movie about, like, a family board game? And it just sort of, because for 2/3 of the movie, we actually don't really have any idea what's going on here. I mean, we know that they are being blackmailed, and because stuff like that, I was a little bit interested to watch it as an adult now that I actually understand, like, what a senator's wife is.
Sure. Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
And most of the sex stuff I got that Scarlett was like a madam. And to use the word Looney Tunes again, I mean, that stuff is in those cartoons, you know what I mean? It's like those kind of, like, innuendos and tropes and cliches and stuff. And it is interesting to me, considering how much of this movie is just these actors performing, like, comedy, that there is still the mystery, and the mystery, for the most part, holds up.
I think so.
And one of my favorite things about it when I was young, and probably now still, is the 3 endings.
Yes. I mean, 100%. That's one of the best parts, because on the one hand, I think you could argue that it's like, well, they couldn't figure out what they wanted to do, so they did like a bunch of things and blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, I love that they couldn't figure out what they wanted to do, and so they did just everything.
Well, it was intended as a gimmick, like a marketing gimmick.
Yeah.
To make people see the movie, so you'd have to go multiple times to see the different endings.
Sure.
And when they released it on video and so forth, they just tacked them all on.
Mm-hmm.
It always, on a subconscious level, said something to me about how there's always more than one story. Like, there's always more than one version. And I do like the times when, because throughout the 3 endings, there's a handful of bits, either jokes or line deliveries or whatever, that are in more than one.
Yeah.
And I sort of like it's almost this weird window into like an alternate reality where the characters still behave in the same way, even if they're under different circumstances.
Right.
That I always kind of found funny. And it's just amusing to me that in 2 of the versions, they find out that they ate monkeys' brains, but in a third, they didn't. Like, they just never knew that. So there is a weird butterfly effect thing happening.
Yeah, that is one of the, and I think it's so interesting how you can, like, how the movie can be so clever while sort of simultaneously giving and withholding the same information.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so sharp. I like, it's also wild to me how the jokes build on each other through the whole thing.
It's very,
it's like there's stuff from the beginning that doesn't pay off till the end. Like how the monkey's brains, how Mrs. Peacock is going nuts over the dinner, and it's like, this is one of my favorite dishes, and we don't realize until the end of the movie what they were eating and why it's significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think of, because there's actually plenty of examples. I'm trying to think of another example of a joke that builds. I mean, well, the movie's full of them. The stuff about Mrs. White and her husbands.
Yeah.
And I mean, this has a lot of great lines, and specifically two lines that we still use daily. Well, probably not daily, definitely monthly, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't even need to, you know what they are.
Well, I'm sure I do, but you should probably say it for everybody.
Okay. The first, and this is, I would say, your favorite, but is the, who are you, Perry Mason?
Yeah, I do love that one.
Who are you? Perry Mason.
And then the other one that we say all the time is sort of like, if something isn't making sense, we'll just kind of be like 1 + 2 + 2 + 1.
2 + 1.
1 + 2 + 1 + 1.
There was 1 shot at Mr. Body in the study, 2 for the chandelier, 2 at the lounge door, and 1 for the singing telegram.
That's not 6.
1 + 2 + 2 + 1.
I also think we do the Madeline Kahn a lot. The flames on the side of my face.
That one I've retired. I remember doing it a lot in like high school and stuff, and I feel like it's gotten too popular.
That could be.
It's like too much of a thing, and so I'm a little bit more. I love Madeline Kahn so much, and that's what I was actually going to transition to, is the individual actors and characters. I love her so much, but for just a moment, I have got to say I am a Leslie Ann Warren girl through and through.
Oh,
I
for sure.
grew up with Leslie Ann Warren in the weirdest of ways. She was like this omnipresence because I had her version of Cinderella when I was a child. And
she's
then,
in the Fairy Tale Theater one, right?
Well, she's in the Rodgers and Hammerstein one.
Or yes, sorry.
And then she's in the Fairy Tale Theater Dancing Princesses.
Oh, okay.
The 12 Dancing Princesses. And then she just kind of gradually kept popping up in things that I was watching, because she's Will's father's mistress on Will and Grace.
Yeah.
And then she's Susan's mother on Desperate Housewives. And she just sort of kept, for every point in my life, she was present in something.
Right.
And she's one of those, I mean, she's been nominated for an Oscar, Best Supporting Actress in Victor Victoria, which I have not seen and we really should see.
We could do that.
And she's one of those that, like, I'll say she's a legend. She's certainly like a gay legend. I mean, it's like itty. And I want to say she's a bit more of a theater actress, but I don't think that's true. I can't recall if I've ever actually, if I'm aware of.
I would say, I imagine she does some Broadway, but I don't know if she's like a theater actress.
But she just pops up, and she has such a presence, and like her voice and everything, and it just like, I love her. And in particular, I love Miss Scarlet. I really think they all everyone in this movie is doing an amazing job, but I think the three women in particular, and Tim Curry, especially by the end, but I think the three women really steal the show. There was a podcast I listened to once where Louis Virtel was being interviewed, and he was talking about how he saw Clue at a younger age, and it was really significant to his development because he was like, it's one of the first times that I noticed that the women had the better material.
Yeah.
Like, they had the more comedic material than the men, and that's not common.
No, and it definitely wasn't common then.
Up to and including Yvette. I don't remember her being as funny when I was younger.
No, Yvette's really funny.
I think I was distracted by her buxom
boobs.
Which, it's actually really gross. There was, like, several women that auditioned for that role, up to and including Madonna.
I saw Demi Moore, too.
And the producer or director, one of them, whatever, admits that she got the role solely because she had the best figure. And I'm like, don't discount she's really embraced the Looney Tunes-ness of it.
Yeah.
Like, I remember the lines of hers that were supposed to be funny from childhood, which were usually about her being sexy. But there was, like, the accent is ridiculous. It is so ridiculous, and she is so committed to it.
So committed.
And just the handful of physical comedy scenes, like, the two that slayed me is the one is when she's up in the attic with Mr. Green.
Yeah.
And they're both trying to walk up the stairs, and he's pushing her in front of him.
Yeah.
And she's trying to not go, and just her physical comedy there. And then also when they're, like, running down the stairs, and she just, like, her arms and her tits are just, like, bouncing all over the place and stuff.
Akimbo, if you will.
It's really, and also her name is Colleen Camp. They say it in the credits, obviously, but I always knew that. And frankly, a great beauty, especially in that time. But she's also one of these people who is just randomly, she shows up in Hollywood all the time.
Oh, does she?
She's a character actress. She's been in gobs of things.
Okay.
And she does not look like that anymore.
No, I know. I knew that.
But I recently read something about her, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. I want to even say it was something scandalous. And it was, like, not about her personally. It was, like, something happened at a party she was throwing or she was involved in Hollywood. And it was just one of those things where it's like her name, because I think she's also produced on a lot of stuff. So her name really shows up a lot of places and a lot of weird places.
Sure.
But yeah, that was my salute to Yvette the maid. And I mean, obviously as a child, I've said this several times, but I was, like, really sensitive to violence against women. So it always bummed me out when she was killed.
Yeah.
But it also still, I think even to this day, feels weird to me because she ends up being so involved with him in a way that the others aren't.
Yeah, she really does. You're right about that. Wow, she has been working consistently.
Yeah.
I pulled up her IMDb because I was curious.
Yeah, going back to Leslie Ann Warren, I think her Scarlet is so timeless. Well, that's not actually because she's very of her time, but she's like out of, like, a 1940s movie.
Yes, yeah.
She's so brass. She's a broad, if ever there was one.
She is a broad.
And she's wearing the greatest dress ever.
It's amazing. It's in her like, it's like a dark green dress and then, like, a light blue stole that she's got pinned with, like, a diamond
like
brooch.
A mint, yeah.
Yeah.
All of her, like, looks and her scoffs and stuff. And one of the things that I think makes her performance so incredible is that she only became involved 2 days before production.
I read that too, because Carrie Fisher was originally cast, and she had to go to rehab.
I'm curious what Carrie Fisher would have done with it.
I mean, we all know Carrie Fisher is hilarious, but I wonder if she would have been as brassy
I think
about
she
it.
would have been more deadpan.
Yeah.
Like, slightly more dignified, I think.
Sure, I can see that.
And Leslie Ann Warren gets into the dirt.
She really does.
And she throws her whole body into everything. The shoulders, the elbows, the wrists. I mean, the way that she, look, and all that. it just, like, and she's got the eyes and the like, because it's meant to take place in the 50s, but that's 80s hair.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's chef's kiss, the performance and really everything.
It is one of those things where you have to wonder, like, is this one of those movies where, like, the gods looked down and were like, Carrie Fisher won't be right? Put Leslie Ann Warren in?
Well, I want to say she's the producer's wife.
She was one of the producer's wife.
And that's one of the reasons why she went ahead and just jumped in, is because I guess she had been present during casting, so she was already pretty familiar with the script. She was like reading lines with them and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a world without this performance. It's not that I don't think Carrie Fisher could do it. It's that
I want this.
Yeah, I'm glad that we have this. And I think, like, you know, though she is a famous and accomplished actress, I sort of feel like this is her crown jewel.
Oh, for sure.
Having not seen the role she was nominated for an Oscar for.
Yeah, and again, we should add that to the list.
But I do love how increasingly disheveled they become throughout, because we already mentioned that she loses the stole, and I know you were getting a lot of mileage out of Mrs. Peacock's hat.
Oh my god. It just is Eileen Brennan, her physical comedy in this movie is astounding, and even more so because I read in the trivia that she took this role. It was her first role after she got out of like the Betty Ford clinic for getting addicted to painkillers. And so she was like, the hardest part for her was doing all the running around and stuff, but like her physical comedy comes through in this movie. It is, and specifically when her like little fascinator keeps falling in her face while she's like increasingly losing her shit is one of my favorite visual gags of this movie.
I have to say, as an adult watching it, I was the most struck by her. Like, as an adult revisiting this, her and Michael McKean stuck out for me more than I remembered as a child.
Michael McKean, I don't even know what to say about him. He's so wonderful, like across the board. And then it's like, recently we've been watching, in the last couple of years, I mean, we've been watching Better Call Saul, which he is a regular on. And it's such a dramatic performance, and I had only ever seen him in comedy before that. And it's wild.
Oh, he's the one that does that show on the Cooking Network or whatever that I love so much.
Yeah, and he's the one that has the Cooking Channel show.
That's why.
Yeah.
I never put together that it was the same man. I obviously knew that I recognized him, but
yeah, that's definitely him.
I get him and like the father from Beetlejuice mixed up, although that's a bad one, never mind.
Well, I get all, the two of them and the father from Home Alone and the father from Beethoven all mixed up. They're like all four the same man, interchangeable in my mind.
It's like Darren's on Bewitched. But
yeah.
But no, and frankly, it's so funny because it's like there is a handful of things that I know because of this movie. Like, I know the term defense mechanism because of this movie. And I also, know the term homosexual because of this movie.
Okay.
And because I remember keying in on what was happening, but not having a full understanding of it. And also mixed in there, I had 10-year-old feelings of thinking that he was cute.
Oh, he's super cute in this movie, for sure.
I like blonde hair and glasses.
You don't say.
The work Eileen Brennan was doing really hit me the most on this viewing. And I gotta say, that dress is amazing in a way that I never appreciated before.
It is, and I like it so much because it reminds me of a dress that my mom sewed for herself for one of my dad's like Coast Guard balls or something.
Yeah.
And so like the fabric is so reminiscent of the fabric that she used for that it pings a little place in my brain.
Well, and I remember being young and being angry that they weren't dressed up like in the colors like they were in the game and stuff. And now I think that's probably one of the most perfect, like, just because it's a subversion of expectations. You know what I mean? It's kind of like
they're evidently all dressed in like opposite colors from their game pieces, but all the cars are the game pieces. So
okay, even just her, Eileen Brennan's just her chatterbox, like nervous energy and all the screaming and flailing and stuff. Like, I don't. There are so many bits that are, and that's the issue with this kind of comedy is it's a little bit like slapsticky comedy is very frequently low hanging fruit. But there's also just real gems, like the third time that she goes to faint and Mr. Green goes to catch her and she just goes right through his arms.
Through his arms. Well, because I was gonna say too, I like that how little time it takes her to start nervously chattering in the dinner scene. It's like way less than a minute. They're just like barely sipping, and she just is like, well, I just don't know, blah, 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 blah.
Because there's
like
the shot of Christopher Lloyd and Leslie Ann Warren just kind of gobsmacked, eating shark's fin soup. I was like, I kind of wish there was a third course and it was just as, like, awful.
Yeah, shark fin soup, monkey's brains, and then, like, something really fucked up for dessert.
Yeah, I really do with, like, what, aspect or something? I don't know.
Oh, God.
Mr. Body was always weird to me.
He's weird to me, too.
I guess he was cast just because of his name.
Yeah.
That was dumb. That's one of the things that I'm kind of like, I don't know how this happened.
I kind of agree. I mean, I think that the character is fine existing, but my problem is the actor, because he's, like, certainly not on par with the rest of them.
No, it's very... And we don't deal with it for long, but it's like... Because I also felt the same way about... Because Yvette, like, Colleen Camp holds her own with these people. But It's like the cook and Mr. Body were always so odd to me. They feel like they don't belong anywhere near this.
Yeah.
And some of the others, because they're not really players, but it's like, I think like the cop, I don't know his name, but also Jane Weedlin, the singing telegram girl, like they fit the world.
Yes, yeah.
But,
well, yeah, I mean, it's like Mr. Body and the cook aren't outsized enough.
Mm-hmm.
They're like Mr. Body isn't like villainous enough, and the cook isn't like, she should have been like hacking away at like sides of beef the whole time or something.
Yeah, she really needed to be a more ominous presence. That would have been funny. And I mean, it's well, I was going to say the movie doesn't need to be longer, but actually isn't it on the shorter side? I think it could have easily had another 5 or 10 minutes, but...
Yeah, it's not too long. Let's see. It is an hour and 34.
No, yeah.
So it could have had 10 more, and I think it would have been fine.
Did you have anything specific that you wanted to say about Martin Mull, or...
Mm-hmm. So I, obviously, before I saw this movie, I knew him as the principal from Sabrina when we were growing up. And it's one of those things where, like, I didn't know of him as a person outside of that, and it's always weird watching people that you only know from one thing do something else. And so I had a lot of that the first time I watched this, where I was like, the principal from Sabrina is acting really weird. But no, I mean, I think he's great. I think his like sort of leching around Leslie Ann Warren and Colleen Camp is kind of hilarious, because he and Christopher Lloyd do it too.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's the only one, and I love Martin Mull and I love him as Colonel Mustard, but I think he's the only one that I think he gets overshadowed by everyone else.
Agreed. I think so too.
Even Christopher Lloyd, like he kicks it up, maybe not to 11, but you know, certainly 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And his stuff with Leslie Ann Warren is really funny.
Mm-hmm.
And it is Martin Mull who pours the whiskeys, though, because that has always annoyed me. And actually, we did gloss over Madeline Kahn, but it's, for me, especially with this movie, Madeline Kahn is like the Kate McKinnon of SNL at the moment, where I sort of am like, so much is said that I don't feel the need to add to that. I'm
like, what could we say that hasn't already been said? Yeah,
I think Kate McKinnon's wonderful. I think she's the, you know, one of the best, but it's like, I'm more of like but what about Cecily Strong, you know? Mm-hmm. But this is such a performance of hers. And I guess I haven't seen a ton of her stuff. I mean, I've seen Blazing Saddles, and I've seen Young Frankenstein, and I've seen History of the World, and A Bug's Life. That's her last movie. Aw,
it was good. I liked A Bug's Life.
She was Gypsy the Moth.
Yeah.
This performance is great. And I think one of my favorite things, because I remember it as a kid, but it's like, for whatever reason, I only really tuned in on it this viewing. But she is like classically trained in opera.
Oh, okay.
And so at the end, when they're singing to Mrs. Peacock, for She's a Jolly Good Fellow, and I just love how she goes in with the harmony.
For she's a jolly good fellow, for she's a jolly good fellow, for she's a jolly good fellow, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny. For she's a jolly good fellow, for she's a jolly good fellow, for she's a jolly...
She really does. And it catches me off guard and makes me laugh every single time, because it's like I want to know if that was in the script or if she just decided.
I don't think so.
It's such a thing to do.
I think she just decided.
Well, but fine. So Madeline Kahn decided, but then within the character, Mrs. White just decided to go with the harmony, which is hysterical.
And again, and it's great. It's so, her voice is so sweet, and it's like, because as I already mentioned Blazing Saddles, and it's like she has a musical number in that, but it is for comedy. I mean, it's that kills me, and I think there was a fair amount. I know that they had a beast of a time writing the script. There was like a lot of people involved, up to including at one point Stephen Sondheim.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. But I think there was a fair amount of ad-libbing, and she did, ad-lib the famous flames scene. And that is such a real, like, I don't think anyone has ever seen this movie and not immediately understood exactly what she was trying to convey.
Oh, totally. No, it's like, it's one of the most perfect
like when you
moments
when you hate someone beyond words.
Absolutely.
You were jealous that your husband was stopping Yvette. That's why you killed him, too.
Yes. Yes, I did it. I killed Yvette. I hated her so much. Flames on the side of my face, heaving breaths.
Flames on the side of my face.
Because that's the best part too, is she's trying so hard to explain exactly why. And she can't get there. And it's just like, I've been there. We've all been there.
And just her like dignified, like, oh, I don't know. It's so great. And I want to say this is probably the first movie I ever saw where a woman threw a champagne glass into a fireplace. Like,
oh, sure. And I mean, that leaves a mark on you.
Especially as a gay youth. So I guess that does bring us to Tim Curry.
Yeah, I love him. I love him so much.
This has to be hands down my favorite performance of his.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, I probably agree with you.
And I said my favorite. I didn't say best, but I think if I only got to pick one, it would have to be this one. Because, I mean, I
know. Congo is very good.
I've not seen that.
Oh my God, we should watch it. It's terrible, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I watch Rocky Horror, and I think I get it. I appreciate it, but it's not my thing.
Yeah.
Weirdly. It seems like it would be the burlesque, like, but his character in this is so funny, and he's also playing like 4 different characters. Yeah. Because depending on the ending you get,
100%.
It's hard to place, and it's just, they all unravel. I mean, I already mentioned how they gradually become disheveled, but by the end of it, I'm actually sort of like, he just does turn into this madman that they're locked in this mansion with.
Well, it's not even like, he's not even like fully mad. It's just like a weird, chaotic nonsense.
The specific part that gets me every time is it's by the end when he's explaining how they did it, and he does the picked up the dagger, and the way that he thrusts his body onto the table, and he has crazy eyes, and then it cuts immediately to him running knees up, running down the hallway with the dagger in his hand.
Yeah.
And the times when he like leans into, like when he's just in the refrigerator.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And he falls out, and Scarlett screams again, and and he just keeps going with his explanation. It's so funny, and I don't think it will never not be funny. Like,
no, not ever. I mean, it's a masterclass performance in like, or I guess a masterclass in comedic performance specifically. There's no excuse for anybody in this movie to be going as hard as they're going, except for that they just wanted to.
It really isn't. It's not on the script. Like,
no, like the dialogue is funny, but the funniest part of this movie is how everybody delivers their dialogue, and that's the moment where you're like, oh, this wasn't written exactly this way. They are doing this because they want to do it this way.
Well, and I guess, I mean, that type of comedy, like slapsticky comedy, is for obvious reasons, I think one of the most base form of comedy. I wasn't going to go here, but I'm going to. I read this thing a year ago, and we made fun of it at the time, but I haven't been able to get it out of my mind since.
Okay.
And it was an essay, and the first line of it said, "All comedy is violence."
Interesting.
And at the time, we both kind of scoffed at it, and we just moved on, because I think we made a snap judgment or something.
Sure.
But it was talking about how, at its very foundation, all comedy is a form of deceit or violence.
Okay.
Of not getting what you think you're going to get.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's probably one of the reasons why slapsticky stuff can feel trite, but also transcendent at the same time, is because I think you're really getting to, it's like that line in True Blood where they're like, puns are the earliest form of comedy.
Yeah.
And even within this movie, I mean, this comedy movie, there's violence. And the line that I always love the most is when they're by the bathroom and he keeps getting like louder and louder. And they're like, there's no need to shout. And he's like, I'm not shouting. And he's like, all right, I'm shouting. And the candlestick just falls and hits him on the head and he just goes down. And the first time I saw it, I thought he was dead.
Oh, no.
Like, flat was like, oh, he just died. And I'm repeating myself a little bit earlier, but I really think that this movie will probably always be funny. I don't think that there's anything
Well, I mean, this movie is as old as we are, and it has never, I mean, it's a little bit culty, but like way more people know about this than know about Drop Dead Gorgeous.
Yeah, and it was also one of those where it bombed hard, and I don't know what it is about so many brilliant pieces of art that get completely misunderstood.
It's because the plebes don't get it.
I mean, a lot of times that, but I also think, especially if we're talking about Hollywood, I think that the biggest crime is misrepresenting movies. I think if they don't get the proper advertisement. And frankly, I mean, I think a lot of art is ahead of its time, if only by 4 or 5 years sometimes. Because we talked about
I can agree with that for sure.
We talked about that with Jennifer's Body. That Jennifer's Body, you know, was made. If that was made today, it would be a different thing. But I also think pushing it to like 2013 or 14 would have given it an edge.
I can agree with that.
So
for sure.
I think that, you know, Diablo and the writer, you know, were onto something that just hadn't matured into the mainstream yet. And, you know, something like this, I don't, you know a lot about marketing movies in the 80s.
No, I mean, neither do I. Also, just for reference for anybody, this movie came out 4 days before I was born.
Oh, fun. But it also could be an example. It could be like a bedfellow with Drop Dead Gorgeous in that it's funnier once you've seen it.
Yeah, on repeat viewing, it gets better every time.
And that's difficult. That's a tall order to ask somebody of comedy to be like, I need you to watch this movie.
And then I need you to watch it like 2 more times immediately.
Yeah. It's sort of, there's a lot of work involved. And so it's like, you have to have something that snags you in, that makes you want to revisit it. And then it's through the revisitation that it like blooms.
Yeah.
And
agreed.
It really, I'm pleased to say that, in all honesty, I mean, I'm being a little bit harsh here, but I don't think it's quite as good as I remember.
Okay.
But I think it deserves its place in the cultural
film history.
Yeah, and the fondness, and it deserves its status as a cult classic. And
yeah, I guess I would have to say that after like the 10th or 11th time I watched it, I was like, it pays fewer dividends every time you watch it after a point, but it still is just such a like fun little romp to have on like a Sunday afternoon.
I'm very glad I was introduced to it young.
Yes, agreed.
I think if this was my first time watching it, I think I would be sitting here going, it was funny. I mean, I understand the humorous stuff, but it's like, I think it's a good one. And that's where, to bring this back around full circle, the whole, the tone and the genre of how it's actually, especially in the beginning, kind of ominous, like kind of scary at parts and stuff, you know? There's points where you're sort of like, who's lurking in that passageway? So I had something I wanted to say about this, but I don't remember what it was. I just said Mr. Green sitting on the desk when it breaks. and how it breaks. I think that's how, because like I said, the movie starts off being a bit murder mystery, and I think that was like one of the first reminders that this is going to be a comedy, because the tension had gotten so thick in that point. And then him falling, the desk breaking, and everything like that just sort of jolts you to. And frankly, it's that is a key element in horror and suspense, is comedy. Breaking the tension through something funny or unexpected, not always scary.
Well, yeah, that's what we learned from Nanette.
Yeah.
And that was like that was such a good deconstruction of comedy. That whole special, and I just like. That's what she was like, the tension breaking is what's funny. It's like you have to get people to the breaking point and then break it for them. And if you don't do it, then that's when you're in like a tragedy. And I love that interpretation of different comedic things, because you're totally right about that moment with Michael McKean on the desk, because it is getting really tense. There's a couple of people have died already. They're like not sure who amongst them might be a murderer or whatever. And then he just literally falls down on like a desk and brandy and the floor, and you're like, oh no, okay, we're good. It's funny. It's still funny.
And frankly, I mean, that sort of comes back around to the thing that when your Nanette reference, that comes around to the thing that I said about the all comedy being violence. I mean, that there is, it's almost mathematical what you can and cannot get away with.
Yeah.
And so in that regard, a funny murder mystery actually makes perfect sense.
It does.
So I think I'm good. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, the only thing I want to say is to play us out with Shaboom.
Shaboom, shaboom.
So,
I know that song from this movie.
I know it from this movie too, and then it's also in Cars when they're cruising.
It's so good.
Yeah. So, okay, as always, you can follow us on Twitter @SoI'mWatching. Oh, this movie also is on Amazon Prime now, so if you've never seen it, go do yourself a favor and watch it on Amazon Prime for free. So then you can follow us on Twitter @SoI'mWatching, Instagram @SoI'mWatching this show. We're also on Facebook and Tumblr, So I'm Watching This Show. As mentioned, we're going to get played out with Shaboom, but can you also put it on the Spotify playlist?
Yep, if it's there.
So I'm Watching the Show, the music. And then, as always, please rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen.
Done and done.
That's it for us.
Bye.
Shaboom, shaboom. Ya la 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 la, shaboom, shaboom. Ya la 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 la, shaboom, shaboom. Ya la 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 la, shaboom. Shaboom, shaboom. Ya la 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 la, shaboom, shaboom. Ya la 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 la, shaboom, shaboom. Ya la 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 la, shaboom.